Hello folks, welcome back to Canada's Boxing Channel. Firstly, if the lighting isn't that good or there's a little bit of a sound in the background, it's because we're day 2 without power. Massive windstorm blew power lines down in many areas, so we're certainly not alone. So there's a generator running in the background for limited lighting and allowing me to make this video. We're fine. We've got a generator. It's not minus 30. Thankfully, we're back from vacation, so this didn't happen when the farm sitter was here. And, well, we're resilient, sort of rural folks, right? Kind of reminds me of growing up in the UK in the early 70s with the power cuts, except no generator in those days. Anyways, to boxing. There's a fellow by the name of Max Kellerman. And he's caused a bit of a sensation amongst the boxing aficionados in that he said that Olexander Usyk, the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, excuse me, is possibly overrated as a heavyweight. He did say he was a pound for pound great, but maybe overrated as a heavyweight. And many Usyk fans have gone online and said that Kellerman's talking out of his rear end. And I thought I would just share my perspective. I am Team Usyk all the way. I am a big Usyk fan. Clearly the best of this generation of heavyweights. But I'm also a bit of a boxing historian, kind of amateur historian, And I've done a number of videos about heavyweights all-time greats. They're in actually the folder called playlists, and you can find them there. For example, I rate Joe Louis number 1, Muhammad Ali number 2, though I would never argue with somebody who put it the other way around, and I used to put it the other way around myself. And I've always said, when you look at all-time greats, your list will depend upon your metrics. So in other words, what you consider the most important will ultimately determine where a certain fighter sits in your top 10 list or top 20 list. So for example, metrics I use for determining all-time greats includes length that you were the champion, how many years you were a champion, the quality of opposition you faced, how many title defenses you had, how many total fights you had. So these things tend to put a premium, if you like, on many things that the fighters of yesteryear achieved. And so if I'm looking at Usyk, I'd have to adjust those metrics really, because modern day fighters simply don't have as many fights and such things. But so that's how I arrive at my top 10, top 5, whatever, right? And so, like in my list, people like Vladimir Klitschko do really, really well, whereas other fighters who I would personally prefer may not do so well. So that's how I arrive at my list. And however you arrive at your list is great. So, you can just choose different metrics. But with Alexander Usyk, if we look at his heavyweight record, we have to be objective, I think. He's clearly a fabulous fighter. Absolutely no shadow of a doubt. But let's look at who he's beaten at heavyweight. Now, he beat Derek Chisora. And Derek Chisora, you would say, a former contender, almost a gatekeeper, probably somewhere between those, right? Right, that's his start in the heavyweights, if you like. He's beaten Anthony Joshua twice. He's beaten Tyson Fury twice. He's beaten Daniel Dubois twice. Now, how good was Anthony Joshua? Well, you can only beat the people who put in front of you, of course. Anthony Joshua, unified world title. Would people consider Anthony Joshua like an all-time great? Well, I think not. Tyson Fury. If you look at the resume of Tyson Fury only had one mandatory defense, and that was against Dillian Whyte. His best was beating a fairly old Klitschko, and then a trilogy with Deontay Wilder. Not all-time great stuff either. And Daniel Dubois, a powerful, undoubtedly powerful, athletic, young fighter. Now, you've got to compare and contrast that to, say, Muhammad Ali, who beat Joe Frazier, Ken Norton, George Foreman, Ernie Shavers. And you can see the difference in resumes, and over a period of time. So Muhammad Ali, he beat Sonny Liston in 1964, and he carries on his career right the way through to beating George Foreman, right? And beyond, right? Losing and then beating Leon Spinks, for example. So that period of time. I mentioned Sonny Liston. Sonny Liston, he cleared out the division. So Sonny Liston beat everybody who was a top 10 fighter, and then he beat the heavyweight champion of the world in round 1, and in a rematch beat the then former heavyweight champion of the world in round 1. I'm talking about Floyd Patterson, of course. So Usyk has not, for example, beaten Filip Hrgovic, Martin Bakole, any number of those top 10 fighters. He's really beaten 3 fighters. And no disrespect to Derek Chisora, but he's really only beaten 3. Fury, AJ, and Dubois. And I want to repeat, I'm a massive Usyk fan. But if you contextualize Usyk's career at heavyweight, it might be that this Max Kellerman fellow was on to something. And also, and I mean, this isn't really a defense of what Kellerman said, but it's just sort of my view. He did say that Usyk is a pound-for-pound great. And that, I think, is really important. I would say that Usyk is an all-time great cruiserweight, together with Evander Holyfield, for example. But I'd have to adjust metrics quite a bit to shoehorn him in to be an all-time great heavyweight at the moment. Now, he's 38, but he said he will fight until he's 41. So if he was to, say, knock off, say, 3 more top 10 heavyweights, then we would revise this, wouldn't we? So let's say, for argument's sake, that tomorrow Joseph Parker beats Fabio Wardley, and in 2026 Usyk beats Parker. Well, then another check mark in the how great is Oleksandr Usyk column. Let's say then, just again purely for argument's sake, Hrgovic, right? Pick a name, a top 10 guy, gets to fight Usyk, or Ajit Kabayel. That's a better one. Ajit Kabayel gets to fight Usyk. Now, I think that would be a really hard fight, but let's say that Usyk beats Ajit Kabayel. Check mark, right? And then let's say, again, for argument's sake, the young hotshot prospect Moses Itoma fights Usyk in, say, 2027, and Usyk wins, check mark. Well, then you could say, look at how many top 10 guys he's beaten. And things would change. But as of today, October 2025, I think there's some merit in what Max Kellerman said. Anyways, that's my view. And if you're a massive Usyk fan, well, join the club, because so am I. But it's not disrespectful to talk about these things. It's kind of, in a way, immature to say Usyk is the greatest of all time or an absolute top 10 all-time great right now, because the CV doesn't really support that, unless you say, I'm going to add together Usyk's cruiserweight career and his heavyweight career, which it's not entirely unfair to do, because you have to remember, if you look at, say, Joe Louis and Muhammad Ali, at the weights they were fighting and the people they were fighting, you could kind of say many of their fights took place at cruiser / bridgerweight. You look at Rocky Marciano, and Rocky Marciano, well, yeah, I mean, he would have, his whole career would have been at cruiserweight. So if you wanted to add the two together and say that every fight that Oleksandr Usyk has had as a professional can be sort of considered a heavyweight fight by historical standards, well, then you can add in the people that Usyk beat at cruiserweight. That's all I'm saying. Anyways, what I'd like is for you to share your opinions with me and with other channel members. And, you know, we keep it respectful, because this isn't trashing anybody. I think, you know, you could look back at the videos I've done. I've been very, very much an Usyk supporter. But just because you're a big Usyk supporter doesn't mean that you can't take a critical look at who he's had to fight. And again, he can only fight the people that's put in front of him. It's not like he's ducked anybody or swerved anybody, right? Something that we couldn't say about other top heavyweights in this era, right? Here's looking at you, Tyson Fury, and Deontay Wilder, and maybe Anthony Joshua as well, all of whom have been a little bit, let's say, selective in who they fought. Anyways, that's all from me. I'll try and get this uploaded before I have to turn the generator off, and yeah, we'll continuing. Thanks very much for watching. Please like, please share, please subscribe if you've not, but most importantly, have a fabulous day wherever you are. Cheers. Bye-bye.